This is Front and Nationwide on the Athletic Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to Front and Nationwide. Aaron Portzline with you. Great to have you back. Sorry about last week. Some things popped up that could not be avoided, but we are back. Scott Wheeler of the Athletic Prospect Guru Extraordinaire will join us for the middle segment to talk about the entry draft last night. The Blue Jackets had no shot of winning it, as you know. Well, they could have won the lottery. They could not have won the number one pick. They can't ever win the number one overall pick, league rule. But they could have gotten up as high as 4. I mean, it would have been astronomical odds. And of course it did not. You couldn't have expected it last night. They stay parked at number 14. And if that sounds familiar, they were there last year. That's Jackson Smith, defenseman at Penn State, expected to return to the Nittany Lions. And they've been there before, too. 2013, Alexander Wenberg, who actually, you know what, look at Wenny's career. He's had a pretty good career. The Blue Jackets bought him out. I believe this is the last year of that buyout. So Alexander Wenberg, 13 years after being selected, will be off the Blue Jackets books. So we'll talk to Wheels about the events of last night, what this draft shapes up to be. We'll talk about what kind of player the Blue Jackets can get middle of that first round. And also, he has him 17 out of 32 if you followed his prospects pool reports this year, which I sure hope he did, because they're incredible. But what else do the Blue Jackets have? There's a bunch of guys there at the AHL level percolating. And which of those guys may get up and over and be able to contribute. So a couple other things. We'll get to Wheels here pretty quickly. We'll take your questions in the AskPorty segment at the end. Just some updates. I had a lot of this in the Blue Jackets Monday gathering. So far, according to GM Don Waddell, now this was as of Sunday, no yet negotiations with any of the UFAs. Of course, that's Charlie Coyle, that's Mason Marchment, that's Boone Jenner, Goodbranson. You can put Dan Heinen in there if you wish. They've got a lot of contracts to do. Now, I think sometimes GMs like to classify contact and negotiations as maybe different than some of us would. But those are his words, that the ball has not started rolling yet. At first, they wanted to give these guys some time to sort of absorb the season. I totally get that, but that's going to have to get rolling here pretty soon. The other thing, of course, that's on the radar is the coaching staff. They're going to need at least a couple of assistants, maybe a skills coach in there as well. So I think these playoffs are going to sort themselves out. I think there's going to be a lot of movement in this league here. In the coming days. Crazy couple of days in Toronto. We can talk to Wheeler about that as well. Other things to get to. There are still Blue Jackets players playing. The Cleveland Monsters have advanced to the second round of the playoffs. They will open at home in Cleveland, Rocket Arena, a week from today. If you're watching this on Thursday, May 7th, it's a week from today. So May 14th, the Monsters open the second round series against either Toronto or Laval. Still waiting to figure out who they play. Wonder why I think the AHL has different availability rules to its arenas, right? They're not the dominant force in the arena. That must be the gap between how far out these series go. I mean, some of these teams, I think in round one, the Monsters played on a Sunday and didn't play game 3 until Friday. In where the hell were they? In Syracuse. That's a huge gap. Now, some of this is arena dependency and some of it is crowd dependency. The AHL needs weekends, right? Weeknights can be tough for people. So there you go. May 14th, the Monsters, AHL affiliate of the Blue Jackets, will play either Toronto or Laval. They will open at home on the 14th and the 16th, both of those games at 7. Hey, listen, if you're a Blue Jackets fan, if you're a hockey fan, you live in Ohio, it is a great AHL situation there in Cleveland. Really great arena. I'm sure you've been in it. They put on a hell of a show, and the AHL playoffs are pretty damn competitive. One other thing before we get to Wheels, the World Championships. And I know sometimes these are a difficult tournament for people here in North America to really get into because the Stanley Cup playoffs are going. Many of you have started to sort of take a break from your beloved Blue Jackets for the off season, at least in terms of watching players play games. But World Championships are near. I believe Team Canada departed earlier this week, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, a conversation with Don Granato, I think they leave tomorrow. I think Team USA leaves tomorrow. So Jet Greaves, huge opportunity for him with Team Canada. Denton Matejchuk, huge opportunity. And by the way, a Columbus guy, Misha Donskov, coaching Team Canada. Well, I've got some thoughts on Misha Donskov that I haven't quite entirely figured out how I want to put them together. But when I saw that the whole situation, almost called it a charade, but the situation in Toronto in terms of who they were looking at and who they were interviewing, every time I see teams go through this, and maybe this includes the Blue Jackets, I see this Misha Donskov person who we all should know maybe better than we do as Columbus hockey fans. I've gotten to know Misha very well. Tried to tell his story in a few different ways. He basically built the Vegas Golden Knights' initial approach to play hockey, which has set them up to be one of the best franchises in the league. Assistant coach in Vegas, assistant coach in Dallas. He's worked at the highest levels of Team Canada. This is a guy who I feel like should be mentioned more in some of these really big jobs, who has really the respect of everyone that he's come across. I have never heard anyone say a foul word about Misha Donskov, his work ethic, his intellect, all of those things. It feels like that's a name that needs to start surfacing more. And I wonder if he does end up, I've always wondered if he ends up in Columbus. I know he talked to the Blue Jackets before he took the job with the Stars a few years ago when he decided to leave Vegas, and the Blue Jackets didn't feel they felt they had room for him, which always kind of, I don't know, made me wince a bit. Team USA, Matthew Olivier will play for the red, white, and blue, and they will be coached by former Chill coach, previously mentioned, Don Granato. So lots of connections. There may still be some names to come here. There have been leaks to these names and who's going, but not finalized. I'm told that it is Olivier is the only CBJ player on Team USA. There will be no Zach Werenski late ad this year. That's the sense. Of course, there's a little Z on the way. So that's what we have for you. Let's get to Scott Wheeler. Great night in the league. The entry draft, even if you're not in it, is always an interesting bit of drama. And I love how every year, bless them, the league tries to make it more transparent and easier every year. And even for a numbers geek like me, I know how it works. So I can kind of break through it and put it together if I have to. But my God, the entry draft, the draft lottery is it's a beautiful mind type scene with all of the numbers, and as much as they try to explain it, it almost makes it more confusing. Anyways, I'm glad Ernst & Young was there. Let's go. Let's get to Wheels. Thanks for watching Front and Nationwide. And here we go. All right. Joined now by the Athletic Scott Wheeler. Wheels, how are you? How are the under 18s? And are you back in North America time?
Not quite. I'm still waking up at 4:30, 5 o'clock here. Like I'm tired at the end of the day. The eyes are heavy at the end of the day, and then I'm waking up early. So that part of it, I'm not quite there, but it was good. It was a good trip. It was a productive trip. It wasn't the finish, I'll say, that anybody expected, with Latvia, Slovakia, Czechia, and Sweden as the final four teams, and Canada, USA, and Finland all bounced in the quarters. But that made for an interesting tournament in a lot of ways. And the fans in Slovakia, in Bratislava, and especially in Trenčín were unbelievable. Like I've covered U18s and World Juniors in Germany, in Switzerland, in Czechia, in Finland, in Sweden, basically every major hockey playing country over there outside of Russia. And the fans last week in Trenčín the Slovak fans were the best I've seen. Like it was 6,300, I think, is a sellout there. And every game they played was sold out. They did not stop drumming and dancing and screaming and chanting. They had probably 10 unique songs and chants that they did. It was great. Like it was electric. And them playing in the gold medal game for just the second time ever as a country was obviously huge. And the silver medal for them is a big deal. Right. So yeah, it was, it's a long trip. It's 13 days away from my 3 young kids. And that side of it there's a human side of it, but it's a valuable trip, not just to get updated viewings on the guys at the end of the year, but to obviously speak with scouts and agents and all of that.
Yeah, that's rich. And I'm sure the draft lottery provided you a jolt last night. I'm going into it trying to figure out what if Toronto is 6th and they go here and then they win the damn thing. Of all the stuff going on in Toronto right now, they win the damn thing.
Yeah, I'm obviously I'm about half an hour north of the city here, and when I got off, we did a live reaction show at the Athletic Hockey Show, and then when I got off from that lasted about 25 minutes. When I got off from that, I had about 15 messages from colleagues in my Slack, and I had probably 15 to 20 group chats and text messages from old friends saying, tell me everything you need to know about Gavin McKenna. And then the radio requests started flooding in. It was like, hey, Scott, can I grab you tomorrow? From 5 or 6 different people. So that just goes to show you where the excitement is from that coming out of that moment in Toronto. It had been a rough 24 hours for the Leafs from a PR standpoint. Their introductory press conference with John Chaika and Matt Sundin and Keith Pelly did not go well. And 24 hours later, they were staring down potentially losing a 6th or 7th overall pick to the Boston Bruins as part of that transaction. So to jump up to get to keep that pick. Now they now won't have their first round pick in the next 2 drafts. They've traded their first in 2027 and 2028 as a result of this. But adding Gavin McKenna to Austin Matthews and William Nylander and Matthew Nyes and John Tavares, suddenly your top 6 forwards looks a lot different, and you don't have to use Columbus Blue Jackets alum Max Domi on your first line, and things start to take a bit of a different shape for the Leafs here moving forward. And I think it makes the sales pitch to Austin Matthews to sign another contract and retire as a Maple Leaf a little bit easier as well.
Hey, don't just blame the Blue Jackets for Max Domi either. He was raised in Phoenix and Montreal and
Chicago.
Of course. Big picture, this draft is pretty good at the top, okay through the, what is it? Is it a B draft? Is it a C
I
draft?
don't love it. I think it's probably a C+ or a B- draft. I've been lower on this draft for the last couple of years than most, I think, though. Like last year, I remember at the 2025 trade deadlines, that's almost 14, 15 months ago now. Remember, a lot of the talk was you gotta hang on to your 2026 picks, move your 2025 picks and hang on to the 2026 picks because it's the better draft. I remember thinking at the time, I don't know whether Gavin McKenna and company are all that much different than Matthew Schaefer and company. And I think in hindsight, Matthew Schaefer is the best prospect from either of those 2 drafts. So, yeah, I don't love it. Like you never get too excited when the top 2 prospects in a class are arguably wingers. There have been some players that have really emerged, like the emergence of Caleb Malhotra as one of the top prospects in the draft and a true sort of top center prospect has moved the needle. That was the worry for a long time in this draft, was that it was going to be a wing and D draft and that there weren't sort of those premium centers. Malhotra gives this draft a premium center prospect. And there have been others that have merged. Wyatt Cullen at the NTDP is sort of the talk of the draft, or has been the talk of the draft over the last few months. So it has. I've maybe softened how harsh I was on the class, but I still don't love it. And maybe that's just me looking back on 2023 and 2024, knowing how spoiled we were with not just Bedard and Celebrini, but Adam Fantilli and Will Smith and Leo Carlson and Matvei Michkov and Ivan Demidov. And those were 2023 and 2024 were sort of all-time great drafts, I think. And then 2025, you had Schaefer, and you weren't sure what Schaefer was because of all of the time lost to injury. And this class kind of feels more like 2025.
Yeah, gotcha. Interesting. Blue Jackets at 14. We did our mock draft last night. People followed your wisdom wheels. I was ticking them off because I don't know these guys, but I ended up with Oscar Hemming in the 14 spot. Big winger. But forgetting Oscar for a second, what kind of player might be there for the Blue Jackets mid-first round? Or we're not talking immediate help, obviously, but probably 2 or 3 years down the line. Are there projects there? Are there plus third line guys at that point? Are there second line guys with unique traits? He seems to have size and drive and all of that, but other guys have other things they do well.
Well, I'll say this. My draft board, which I'm sure you've seen, is a clear top 13. Blue Jackets fans won't like to hear that, knowing that they pick at number 14. But in saying that, I think there are 2 players in particular from my top 13 that aren't going to necessarily go in the top 13. So those would immediately be, like, if I'm sitting at the Blue Jackets draft table, the 2 players that I'd be keying in on are Ryan Lynn and Wyatt Cullen, who I obviously mentioned off the top. Lynn, actually, there is analogous in a lot of ways to Denton Matejchuk, 5'11" and a half, maybe 6 foot by the time he's playing. Western Canadian D, extremely smart, detailed, mature sort of defensive habits for his age, pedigree in the WHL, pedigree in minor hockey in Western Canada, pedigree with Hockey Canada. There's a lot of lines to be drawn between Denton Matejchuk and Ryan Lynn. I think they're similar caliber prospects. I'm a little higher on Ryan Lynn at this stage in the process than I was on Denton Matejchuk, and I was high on Denton. I have Lynn 9. I think I had Matejchuk right around where he ended up getting picked, which was, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 12.
Yeah.
And I think Lynn probably goes sort of 14 to 17, I think, is probably where Lynn actually ends up on draft day. He's committed to play for David Carl at the University of Denver next year. I think that's going to do wonders for him. And I believe not just that he's going to be a good player, but that potentially Ryan Lynn has a chance to be a really high-end defenseman in the league. Cullen's an interesting one. Wingers tend to fall, but he's also sort of on that rise. He's on that kind of not Beckett Seneke rise where he's going to end up at 3rd overall, or Mason McTavish rise where he's going to end up at 3rd overall. But that's kind of the path that Wyatt Cullen has been on. He was 5'5" and 120 pounds when he arrived at the program. He's now 6'1", and he's got all of the little guy skills. So he's got the playmaking and the feet and the mobility and the deception and the offense. And he has that within a 6'1" package, and still has tons of room to fill out and all of that. He literally tore his hip muscle off of the bone this year just from growing pains because he was growing too fast. But he's an extremely talented player, like reminds you a little bit of guys like James Hagens when you watch him play. Just a highly skilled winger that I think is going to be a top 6 winger in the NHL. So there are real talents there. Hemming, who you mentioned off the top, absolutely belongs in that range. So I don't begrudge you for making that pick. Hemming's a kind of a power forward type, can bully teams with his ability to just drive and drop a shoulder and get to the net and that side of it when he's at his best. But it comes with some question marks after sitting out the first half of this year due to a contract dispute in Finland. He tried to play in the BCHL, couldn't make it work. He tried to play for the Kitchener Rangers in the OHL, couldn't make it work. They wouldn't release him from his contract back home. Then he walks away from his contract, goes to Boston College for the second half of the season. They didn't bring him to U18 Worlds because of it, the Finnish Federation. But he just wanted to play. His agent and family practically begged them to let him out of his contract. And he's got some unique attributes, like kind of reminds a little bit of Matthew Nyes at
Yeah.
that sort of same age, like that sort of modern power forward type. So those are the kinds of names you're talking about. I think some of the guys who are going to go in that range are probably middle six guys, but I think there's probably one or two sort of higher grade players to answer that second part of your question that are in there. Like there's going to be a top six player in there or potential star in there somewhere.
Love the draft. Love the draft. I always think guys like Cullen, of course, is the son of Matt Cullen.
Yep.
I just think that goes a long way with GMs too. That's just a little feather in the cap. This kid has been around it. He's surrounded by people who knows what he has seen the path, or he has someone right on top of him who can show him the path.
Wyatt's younger brother, not to get too off track here, but Wyatt's younger brother Joey is viewed as arguably the number one prospect in the 2010 age group. So we might be hearing about a Joey at first or second or third, Joey Cohen at first or second or third overall in a couple of years as well.
Yeah. Wow. Blue Jackets, as we said, at 14. This is the second year in a row they've been at 14. Let's go through some of their top prospects. We'll do their top D, top forward, top goalie prospect, if you will. That guy they took at 14 last year, Scott Wheeler with The Athletic joining us, was Jackson Smith, defenseman, played freshman year at Penn State's back for his sophomore year, we believe, at Penn State. Where has he gone in the years since that draft as you see him, Wheels?
I thought it was a positive season for him. Penn State had some ups and downs. He had some ups and downs. But by and large, I think it was a positive season for him. The people I've talked to around the Blue Jackets and around Penn State were really happy with the way that his year went. He still has some flaws. Like the big thing that Jackson has to figure out and that he's going to have to sort of learn and work through at the NHL level when he makes the jump, which I would expect could come as early as next spring, is just this sort of decision-making element, the thinking, the processing under pressure, making better choices with the puck, that side of it. He's prone to the odd hiccup or turnover, the odd moment of panic. But the physical tools are what really define Jackson and his game. He's a tremendous skater, like an elite 6'3" skater. He's got the body. He can shoot it, he can handle it, he can carry it, he can pass it. All of those sort of elements that need to be there in order to become a top four defenseman in the NHL are there. And really now it's just about learning the game and figuring out what his identity is. Is he going to be a true PP1 guy, or is he more of a PP2 guy? What kind of impact could he have on the penalty kill, if at all? That's never been a big part of his game. It was in the WHL, but he's not necessarily viewed as a PK1 guy. Is he just a 5-on-5 guy who runs your second power play, or is there some star power there in the prime of his career where he can maybe start out in that kind of a role and then evolve into something more? That's what you have to work through with him, and that's part of his development process. But the skating is going to carry him, and he's going to play in the NHL because of it, and he's quite likely going to be a positive NHL player because of it.
Yeah. Here's a tough one, and I know there's been much gnashing of teeth about Cayden Lindstrom. I think if you're an optimist, you look at this past season and say he stayed fairly healthy, especially with the surgically repaired back.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't grab a big role there, which is not unusual for a freshman heading into college, but a guy drafted that high, you would have expected more, I think is fair to say. This feels like a big season coming up for me in terms of his production.
Huge.
Like he's got it healthy, obviously. We'll say that for the rest of his career. But the numbers and the production has to be there. And where do you see him trending?
I think it's a big season in terms of his maturity as well. Like I know that was a bit of a challenge for him, just navigating college, navigating his discipline, managing his discipline on the ice. It was a challenge for him at times last year, and he was in the doghouse at times last year. They fought through it with him at times last year. Just he runs really hot out there. He can be undisciplined with his stick and with his body, taking too many penalties, not playing a team game all the time, trying to do too much. And then when the points start to come, you start to feel like you've got to produce and you've got to make plays. And you're forcing it even more, and then it can really spiral. So I think just finding more of an even keel in his career, in his production, in his attitude, in his decision making on the ice, that's the most important thing for him. If the health is now, and it's not in the rearview mirror, from my understanding, it's something that he deals with every day in terms of getting his body with Will Morlock, their strength and conditioning coach there. They put a lot of work into getting him ready and healthy and prepared to play. And it's not dissimilar to what Gabe Vilardi has had to navigate in his career with the Winnipeg Jets, where Gabe's now become an excellent, he was at almost a top 10 pick. I think Gabe went 11th overall. But Gabe dealt with multiple back injuries, and it lingered for a long, long time. And just because he's playing now doesn't mean that it's not a factor. Like, it's something that Vilardi is still dealing with. And I think that may be a little bit of the situation with Cayden as well. I'm not a doctor, so I can't make a diagnosis on when or how this is going to impact his career moving forward. But at this point in time, it still feels like it's having an impact. And it was not a good year for him. He needs to have a better season this year. He needs to take a step. I think he's in a good place. Like, he's in good, from a health standpoint, he's in good hands with Will Morlock. From a coaching standpoint, I think he's in good hands with Adam Nightingale and that staff there. And then it's just about sort of building. And they just went through it with Charlie Stramel. Charlie Stramel transferred there from Minnesota Duluth. He had a really tough freshman year, another big body center. And they by the time he was done his career at Michigan State, Charlie Stramel was one of the better players in college hockey and a top 10 finalist for the Hobey Bakers. So I just think patience is going to be important for Cayden. Even if he doesn't want to be in school, even if he wants to turn pro, I think maybe spending another year or two there is, certainly this year he's obviously returning, but potentially even a third year there, I think should be a real part of the conversation with him. And then it's just about taking incremental steps. And at this point, I think you're just hoping, and I know this isn't what Blue Jackets fans want to hear, you're just hoping he becomes an everyday top 12 NHL forward for you. Like, that's a positive outcome at this stage, I think, for Cayden. He still has a ton of elements. Like, he's still a physical freak. He still has the quick twitch hands. He can still fire the puck. He was owed more last year than he got on the score sheet. Like, I watched him play a ton, both live and on tape in East Lansing. And he had chances. He hit some posts. Like, that was a talking point around him a little bit. But the IQ is an issue. The skating is now very upright. It's always been a little bit upright, but it looks a little unconventional out there when he's moving around the ice. He picks up his stick into that pitchfork, and he's sort of very upright. He doesn't necessarily have that sort of power that I think people hoped that he was going to have in terms of the sort of quick twitch feet to go with the quick twitch hands. And the decision making and hockey IQ have always been a question mark. So it's about sort of figuring out what his identity is. And you can't be a fourth overall pick and just be a mean physical plug and play checker. And maybe that's what he ultimately becomes. But you'd hope that he can sort of find that offense and produce. And he does have, the hands are there. Like, he's got really good hands, and he can fire the puck. So there are elements there. And he's got some obvious power, obviously. But it's just about doing it more consistently, and it's about discipline for him. Like, he just needs to be more disciplined on the ice and make better decisions on the ice.
Yeah, I feel like his sophomore year, there's going to be a lot of, hopefully he figured out a lot of stuff that freshman year that he can apply.
Yeah.
In all ways. That's got to be a weird to come from a different country to a U.S. college setting where you never, 4 months, 6 months earlier, you never anticipated going to college.
Yeah. And he hadn't played, like, let's remember, he barely played hockey in a year and a half, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of room there for sure. The goalie they took last year in the first round that surprised some people, not you, Pyotr Andreanov. How tough is it getting info and reports out of Russia still today? And what did you see from young Pyotr this year since the Blue Jackets have drafted him?
It was kind of just an okay year. Like, you talk to people who either scout that league, which is a very small list of people, or who keep track of goalies, and people were sort of maybe a little down on Petr and just the year that he had. very talented goalie, has the attributes, isn't the biggest goalie, but it has size in terms of like he's a thicker kid, like he carries around some weight. Yeah, carries around some weight. He's got great hands. He can play the puck. The rebound control is there. The control is there. He's up over his toes, which all of those Russians are. Like they're very Russian goalies tend to be not jittery, but they bounce around the net a little bit more. They're more active in the net. They're sort of in that very active stance. They don't like to sit back quite as much as some of the goalies in North America, and certainly in Finland and Czechia do. He's got kind of that attribute, which frankly Jet Greaves has as well, and a lot of their goalies have. I don't think it's a coincidence that between Sergei Ivanov and Andreanov and Jet Greaves that they've got all of these sort of 6-foot active goalies. It's clearly a market inefficiency that they feel they can tap into, and obviously with Jet, it's been a huge success. So, no, he's a legit goalie. He's one of the 10 or 12 top goalie prospects in the sport. It was always going to be a long-term thing. He's still signed in the KHL, so there's no immediate timeline there at this stage. And you just sort of hope that he becomes that sort of KHL stud that so many of those goalies do. And that didn't happen for him this year. He was also in an organization that had like 5 legit goalies. So that I think worked against him a little bit. I do wonder about a potential loan, which Ivanov did. You'll remember Ivanov went to Sochi for a season and had a really good year in Sochi, and then went back and returned to the club. And so I think that's kind of the potential path you're now looking at for Andreanov.
Blue Jackets, expected to sign Ivanov when his contract expires May 31st.
May 31st, yeah.
Something to look for in early June. Last one for you, Wheels. There's a whole bunch of guys in Cleveland. Good team in Cleveland. If there's one guy that's probably closest to the NHL, it's probably Luca Del Bel-Belluz, but he joins the group of Pinelli, Morelli, Williams, Malatesta, Ceulemans, Ellick. There's all these guys sort of pretty good prospects. Nobody necessarily knocking the door down other than Del Bel-Belluz a bit. When you look at that cluster, that group right below the surface of the NHL, do you see any other guys in there you think can pop? Evan Gardner's there now. Guys that can maybe
another 6-foot goalie.
Yeah, they love their 6-foot goalies.
Yeah. I've always had a soft spot for Pinelli, but I don't think pop is the projection or the term that I would use there. Like, I'm not sure whether you can reasonably expect any of those players to pop. I like Morelli. He got a raw deal with the injury and all the time that he missed. I think he probably would have had a really positive season if not for that. Pinelli, I've always had a soft spot for. Like, he's just a worker, and you talk to any coach from Dave Cameron on down who's ever been around Luca Pinelli, they love him. They love him. They think he's a dog, and he's just a worker. He can rip the puck. I know he took a lot of heat when Dave Cameron, his coaching with the Ottawa 67s, put him on that World Junior team, and not just put him on that World Junior team, but used him on his first line. And I actually thought Pinelli had a really positive tournament there and proved a lot of people wrong. And that's kind of been the story of his career. He's a 5'9", 5'10" kid. He's a bit of a stocky kid as well. Like, he carries around some weight. You can see it in his face a little bit and that kind of a thing.
Face.
Yeah. But he works, and he sort of finds a way. I don't know whether he'll be more than just like a number 11, 12, 13 forward who scores 10 goals for you kind of thing. But I think there is potentially more there. Del Bel-Belluz, I think, becomes a full-time top 12 guy. The challenge I've had with Del Bel-Belluz, and I think we've talked about him in the past, the challenge I've had with Del Bel-Belluz is he's the classic, like, average at everything player. And there was never like a clear, this guy's going to be a power play, like DBB is going to be a power play guy, or DBB is going to be a penalty killer for you, or he's going to be a checker for you. Like, he didn't really have that clear identity. And yet after, what is it now, 3 positive seasons in Cleveland, like, it's time it's time to give him a look, right? He's earned that. So, and I know he's had looks, but it's time to sort of really see if he can take that next step and what he is. And maybe he's just a 5-on-5 guy, or maybe he chips in on PP2, or he's just a 13-minute a night 5-on-5 guy who gives you a little offense. I think he's like 6'1" or 6'1.5". He was never, that was the other thing with him, is he was always kind of a leaner kid. And so he didn't have that sort of thickness that you look for necessarily in your bottom six. I haven't seen him in obviously in person over the last couple of years, so I don't know whether he's added weight. You'd have a better judge of that. But yeah, I think he's a guy for you at least. And if he's not a full-time guy, he's the exact kind of player that makes sense as a AHL call-up.
Yeah. GM Don Waddell has said that they want to come to camp with a spot available for the Del Bell Baloozes, for the Pinelli, for whoever, an open spot for people to compete. And I think when you're a coach like Rick Bowness, who went on the rant that he did at the end of the season, I think you want to create job opportunities in training camp. You can't come with 12 spots set.
Predetermined,
like
you're
looking for. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Wheels, thanks so much, man. Get some rest. I know you won't, but I'm saying that trying to be polite. It's going to be a crazy little marathon for you. And thanks for your time.
Yeah. Cheers, buddy. Anytime.
Appreciate it. Okay, time for a few Ask Porty questions here. We got to quite a few of them with Scott Wheeler. Thanks again to Scott for joining us. Always incredibly insightful, and certainly look at his Blue Jackets breakdown. Follow his stuff throughout the draft, because I do think he's among the best in the business, if not the best in the business. I'll share a link. I think he had the Blue Jackets 17 out of 32. Obviously, they've graduated a ton of players to the NHL the last couple of years, so not a surprising drop. But I'll share that link with this social here when we push this out. We got to a lot of your questions with him indirectly. Let's get to a few more here, and we'll give her a quick wrap. Thanks for watching Front Nationwide, of course. Rock says he's got two questions. Do you think Voronkov figures into this team's 26-27 plans? I do, absolutely. I think, it almost sounds repetitive, broken record at this point. Something has to change there in terms of his ability to play a full season at full energy. This is a player. I find him, I think we graded on a curve for the first couple of seasons, but it's starting to get frustrating unless there's something there that people are missing. He does not have the physical stamina to play the same way later in the season as he does early in the season. I don't know it doesn't sound like he's not putting in the work in the off season, or he wouldn't be able to get going at the start. But something needs to change in terms of his being able to sustain. And I think it affects his game in a lot of different ways. It's hard to play, physically hard to play the way that everybody wants him to play, myself included. He came here, as we've said, with a reputation for being a big, physical, nasty, keep your head up when he's on the ice type of player. Just haven't seen really that, other than a few odd shifts. His first shift in the NHL against Montreal, you thought, boy, here we go. This is an element that any team in this league would love to have. This could be a Wilson type player. Really, we've seen it just in fleeting passages since then. And that's been disappointing. Again, you hear that the first 30 seconds of his shifts near the end of the season were here, and then the rest of the shift was just a complete. Now that's human nature, but I'm talking about a drop where his shifts need to be kept significantly shorter than other players for him to be able to keep pace. So something there has to change. I don't think they're ready to give up on him. I don't think it's a situation where they wouldn't listen to phone calls if people called. I think you got to listen to anything. But boy, you'd hate to give up that size. And I want to be careful not to harp on this too much. But when you've got Kent Johnson and you've got Connor Garland. Ken Johnson's 6 feet tall, but he's not built like a 6 foot solid, firm NHL player. He's a light player. Connor Garland is 5'8", 5'9". Those are going to be 2 of your top 6, maybe 2 of your top 9 in a different sort of configuration. But right now, Connor Garland's our highest paid forward back for next year, starting contracts next year. So to fit those guys in your top 6, which is where they belong by talent and by pay, you're going to need to balance that off somewhere. So I think that Voronkov size could be just so important for them. Marchenko continuing to play a bigger game, as I think he has. Still a step there to take, but it feels like Voronkov is really important here for me. So I would be reluctant to give up on him, but clearly some things have to change. The other question is, does Luca Del Bel-Belluz get a roster spot this coming season? Just touched on that a little bit with Wheels. The sense from Waddell is that they're going to keep a spot open, not for him. He's not going to be promised a spot, nor should he be, but that there will be open jobs at the start of training camp, and that a player like Del Bel-Belluz, we mentioned the others, Pinelli, Williams, these guys, who am I forgetting, can step in there. And Malatesta even has sort of been okay. Dumais is really fallen off, it appears. But in terms of they want competition at training camp. You can't just say we're going to teach culture and then come to camp with 12 spots filled. So that's what I would say to that. I think Del Bel-Belluz definitely has a chance to make this team. I think it's there for him. But I've covered minor league sports. I've covered pro sports for years. The one thing I've learned along the way is it is never, ever just your turn. It's never just your turn unless you're well, even then, if you're a big time prospect, you still got to knock the door down and take that job from somebody. You have to take a job. That's what it is. It sounds a little nasty business, and it is. Del Bel-Belluz is not going to just have a space created. I don't think he's expecting that or thinks he deserves that necessarily. He knows he has to compete for this spot. But there will be others too, and they may bring guys into camp on PTOs. That's a really good thing. So, yeah, I think it's certainly possible. I'm not sure where it goes. The Blue Jackets have him for another season where he does not need waivers to go back and forth. But after a guy's had 2 seasons in the American Hockey League where you're basically a point-a-game player, I think it's sort of time to see what's coming. The question for me is, where is that spot? And is it a top 9 spot? Because the kid can produce, has produced a bit in the NHL as well. I'm not sure what they want to do with that 4th line, though, if he doesn't make the top 9. So, again, to what Wheels said, there's a bit of a tweener aspect there where you wonder where it's going to go. But I think he's an NHL player, and I think he gets a chance this year. Dan Karen says, other than Vogelhuber, are you hearing any other potential names for assistants on Bones' staff? Have heard a few names, talked to a couple of people who have those names, and I think there's so much instability right now. There may be some obvious choices. Maybe Bones is a guy in his Rolodex who he knows he likes, knows he wants on his staff. I would say this: it's going to be an interesting hire if we are correct to say that the Vogelhuber promotion from Cleveland is done as part of a succession plan to the NHL job. Now, I think that can be, they like the idea. They're Don Waddell has even said, not specifically to Vogelhuber, but he likes a succession plan. Clearly Waddell does too. That was the situation in Winnipeg with Scott Arniel, who you would remember. Arniel took over for Bones when Bones had some health scares within his family, and then took over when he left. Still the coach there today. So if Vogelhuber is promoted with the idea that he's going to be the NHL coach eventually, and he does need to get NHL experience, then hiring that second assistant to me will be maybe an unusual, not unusual. It's been done before. I think teams make this clear to people when they hire them, but they'd be looking for a certain type of coach. So not one who aspires to be an NHL head coach necessarily. I think everyone sort of has that dream, but not everybody does. So how do you fit that other person in there next to Vogelhuber if it is assumed that this is the job that Vogelhuber grows into? So I talked to a couple guys who said, I'd absolutely consider Columbus, but I think there's going to be some head coaching jobs open, and those I'm going for those first. I feel like I should get another chance as an NHL head coach. So lots to play out. There's a question in here. John O'Connor, follow-up, asks if Jessica Campbell recently moved on from the Seattle Kraken, if she might be up for an assistant coaching position. I would say, hell yeah, why not? I mean, every report that I've heard is that she did a wonderful job in Seattle. I'm not sure why it ended there. I don't think there's been a clear explanation as to why, but yeah, I think they would absolutely be amenable to that. I think they may have other people in mind as well, but I see no reason why she wouldn't be considered. And the other thing that I keep hearing too is that the Blue Jackets are considering a skills coach. And now this is something that I mentioned a few times last season, or this season, we're still in it, just sort of surmising that when the players that went off the rails, the skilled players, the Johnsons, let's see, Chinnikov, can't forget him. I wasn't sure that there was anybody on this coaching staff who could really get into the existence of the brain of a skilled player like that and truly help them. Kenny McCudden, no longer with the team, of course, left a few years ago with the Babcock debacle to go to the Washington Capitals. He was that skills guy that ran drills for them and sort of helped players process situations. But you wonder, I keep hearing that the Blue Jackets are looking at bringing in a coach specifically in that capacity too. So something to look for. And let's see. Yeah, we got to this one too. Long-suffering Cincinnati and CBJ fan. What should give the Blue Jackets optimism about Cayden Lindstrom's future? I would say the biggest thing to hold on to right now is the fact that he stayed mostly healthy and on the ice last year in East Lansing. I think that sort of foundational get back to hockey mostly full season, was really, really important. Now, Scott Wheeler addressed some of the issues. He stays very plugged in with all of these prospects, all of these programs. I made a trip up to Michigan State hoping to talk to Cayden Lindstrom, watched the game. He didn't play, didn't get a chance to talk. So I don't think he didn't necessarily help himself in a lot of ways this year, but I think he helped himself just in terms of playing hockey, which is the most important thing for him right now. As we've said, this coming season is going to be a really, really important year for him. You hope that there was some major learning and major adjustments to getting settled in the U.S., getting settled in a college setting, which, again, I don't think he ever really was mentally prepared for until it came to be pretty quickly as he sat out that year. It just wasn't even an option for a player who had played in junior. That's all I mean by that. So, yeah, you hope that there was a lot of, okay, this is how things are done. Watch that guy. That's how he did it. This is how Charlie Stramel did it, and really put himself in a really good position where every time I saw Michigan State play last year, you went, wow, the Stramel kid is really going. So I'm not ready to, it's been a tough path. And I think we knew it was going to be a tough path as soon as we knew that back surgery was required, that this wasn't just going to be straight up and everything's great. It was going to be a challenge, and it has been a challenge. Certainly not ready to give up on Cayden Lindstrom yet. I don't think anybody is. Still wish the best for the young man. He's a hell of a talent. But the most important thing, the biggest piece of optimism, I think, is that he was able to play a full season this year after missing so much time. So there we have it. Thank you so much for the questions. Thanks for Scott Wheeler for tuning in and joining us here from The Athletic. Check out his work. There's a lot there for you to digest, especially as you look forward to this year's draft next month in Buffalo. And we'll be back with you very soon, hopefully next week, on the Front End Nationwide YouTube channel. Talk to you all soon. Take care.